Good evening, Muntomusha lapho ekhaya, and welcome to your #1 youth current affairs show. This is Expressions khona la kunqa phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure kanye na ku DTT. Igama lami ngu-Azaria wakwaKhoza. Now mbukeli, in South Africa, millions of young people face obstacles every day. Kodwa ke mbukeli kunentsha ebhekana nezingqinamba iningi elingazi lutho ngazo. Ngikhuluma ngesifo iLupus. Ingabe uyazibuza mbukeli, uyaziphendula ukuthi ingabe iyini iLupus na? Uma sizama ukuchaza ngelikamaGeba, isifo seLupus mbukeli senzeka uma amasosha omzimba ehlasela umnini wawo, lokho esikubiza nge-autoimmune disease. Kodwa ke osolwazi bakhona lapha e-studio ukuzosichazisela kabanzi ngalesi sifo ukuthi what is lupus exactly. I met up with a young lady who's living with lupus and she gave us the 411 ukuthi ngabe kunzima kangakanani ukuphila nalesi sifo. Sithanda ukuxwayisa ababukeli bethu abasheshayo ukwezwela ngemfanekiso equkethwe kulombiko olandelayo. Sisi ngibingelele ngikwamukele ku-Expressions. Thank you so much for joining us namhlanje. So Sisi, we do understand that lupus is a very difficult disease to diagnose, and a lot of people they spend iminyaka trying to figure out ukuthi ngabe yini into wrong ngempilo yami. Just do tell me your story. How were you diagnosed with lupus?
I was diagnosed 10 years after I started showing my first symptoms. So I started showing my first symptoms in 2007 through my periods, and they'd always just be like, no, you're one of those girls that have a heavy flow. Would see bruises and all of that, and then they're like, no, you know, they pushed it away. And as I went through, you know, the painkillers and all of that, I remember one morning I woke up in 2015 and I just couldn't stop bleeding, and rushed to the hospital, and then they diagnosed me with something called ITP, and they said my blood couldn't clot. 2015, 2016 I was sent to a hematologist, and then 2017 earlier he's like, no, I think you might have something called lupus.
Just talk me through your bad day, Mautia, when lupus manje inbambile impela. What does that look like?
A bad day is me not being, like, I'll wake up, let's say in the morning at 8 o'clock, for example, and we normally use something called the spoon theory. So we use spoons to calculate our energy for the day. Somebody who's healthy has 24 spoons, and maybe somebody like me has 12 spoons in a day.
Yeah.
Just waking up and getting into a shower, I may use 3 spoons because that's a lot. Just getting out of bed, I need to thaw like frozen chicken. Getting into the shower, water just hits my skin, and that's painful, you know. Trying to eat, my joints are painful. Having to move around, doing work, I have brain fog and I can't think. You know, those kind of things. You go to a mall, you forget where you parked your car. Sometimes you don't even remember your name. I've had instances where, you know, I didn't remember my name, and because of treatment and the way the disease progresses in everyone, it's so different. I eventually got to experience cognitive impairments, and I remember the last exam that I wrote, I didn't know how to fill in my exam book.
Lo-ke umuntu omusha esichazela ukuthi ngabe kunzima kangakanani ukuphila nesifo iLupus. Njengoba uzwile mbukeli uyasho ukuthi kuba nzima nokuthi ageze ngenxa yobuhlungu futhi izinto eziningi uyazikhohlwa. Osolwazi ke bayasho ukuthi abantu abasengcupheni yokuhaqwa ile sifo abantu besifazane futhi abebala elinsundu, they are most at high risk of getting lupus. But to help me unpack this discussion right now, I'm joined by Udokotela Kavita Makan, who is a rheumatologist, and I'm also joined by Komati, who's a patron and a founder of Lupus Foundation. Ladies, welcome to Expressions. You know, Doctor, when looking at the insert, it seems like lupus is a very difficult disease to live with. And I'm sure, you know, a lot of experts have described it as a chameleon of conditions because it's very difficult to detect. What is lupus?
Yeah, I like that term, chameleon of diseases.
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. It's a very tricky disease. So as you mentioned earlier in your segment, it's an autoimmune disorder. Basically what that means is that your immune system, which is there normally to fight off infections and other foreign bodies from your body, is basically attacking your own body tissues and cells and organ systems. And that can manifest with anything from skin involvement to involvement of major organs like your kidney, your heart, your nervous system. So it's, yeah, and I mean, clinically, it's, you know, manifested like in our patient with skin disease. They have this classic butterfly type of rash. But it can affect, you know, they can present in renal failure, they can present with myocarditis, which means inflammation of the heart. And joints, pain, fatigue. The fatigue that she mentioned is quite classic in our patients.
Ms. Komati, just to rope you in the conversation as well, I understand that you were also diagnosed with lupus, but uma sichazisela umuntu ekhaya, kusuke sekwenze njani uma amasosha omzimba ezohlasela umnikazi wawo?
Thank you for the opportunity. Okwamanje, we don't know what the cause of lupus is. Ihlasela abantu besifazane kakhulu because of the fact that thina ngithi every month siya kuma period, and then because of our ngalahlekelwa igama doctor, because of the
but maybe doctor, you can also jump in to assist. What then triggers the immune system to then affect the owner of the body? What really goes on? What happens?
So the causative factors for lupus is multifactorial. So that's genetics is very important. So there are strong genetic associations with lupus, like any other autoimmune disorder. And we see this in the fact that certain people are affected more by lupus and more severely by lupus. And interestingly, it is our African population that actually suffer the worst with lupus and have much more disease, severe disease. But there are other environmental triggers, and the big one is the sun, the UV light. So the sun is an important trigger, and that's why the skin is probably the best representation of the disease.
I also want us to speak about some of the symptoms. I understand that there are specific symptoms and non-specific symptoms. When ngenkathi uqala ukuzibona ukuthi ish ingathi ngiphethwe lupus or ingathi nginayo lupus, yiziphi impawu? What are some of the signs and symptoms owazibona emzimbeni wakho?
Actually, I didn't know that I had lupus. At that time, a lot of people didn't know lupus. I got diagnosed with lupus in ICU. When already umzimba was attacked, I had shortness of breath. I had joint pain. From a young age, I already suffered from joint pain. I had a lot of bruising on my body. I suffered from migraines. The challenge with lupus, there's almost 11, if I'm not mistaken, different symptoms that you will have. And to be diagnosed with lupus, you have to have at least 4 of those. Then you do have lupus. If I'm right, doctor?
Look, I mean, there's lots.
There's quite a lot
in that area. But I mean, basically, any system can be involved. And I think the big thing is this cognitive decline that our patient spoke about as well. I mean,
and it just happened to me now on the show where I forgot what I was supposed to say.
Ababukeli can also understand ekhaya ukuthi njengoba sisehleli la kuba khona leso sikhathi where the brain just goes blank or you just forget
what you're saying.
You know, when we spoke to some of the patients, they also spoke about the fact that when they go to hospitals, sometimes they are the ones that have to explain to the doctors or to the nurses what's wrong with them. Do you probably think that we need to strengthen our education system with teaching our medical personnel on how to treat lupus?
100%. I mean, it is a tricky disease. It's, you know, it's hard to pick up even for sort of a physician or a specialized doctor because of the heterogeneous nature of the disease. One person doesn't look like the other person. But education is vital at all levels, at a community level. Patient advocates are probably the best kind of people to promote education on lupus.
Ake mbukeli sethemba ukuthi kukhona okufundayo ngalesifo esikhuluma ngaso namhlanje lapha ohlelweni sicobelelana ngolwazi mayelana nesifo esibizwa ilupus. Okwamanje sithi qhu eyitolo. This is Expressions right here on SABC1. We'll be back. Siphinde sikwamukele mbukeli osabekele i-expressions khona la kunqa phambili SABC1 Mzansi for sure. Njengamanje mbukeli sizoxhumana no Ken Williams, nongumlobi wencwadi ebizwa My Name is Lupus, and he is joining us via a video link. Ken, welcome to Expressions, sir.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I am doing good, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I just need to know, when we're doing our research, it shows that 9 out of 10 cases of people that are suffering from lupus are abantu besifazane. But you are male and you were diagnosed with lupus. Just talk me through the journey. When were you diagnosed and how has it changed your life?
Well, from 2017 to 2019, I wasn't diagnosed. I was still suffering. But then in 2019, I was diagnosed to have lupus by a doctor in East London. And I must say, before I was diagnosed, it wasn't easy. I almost died myself. My skin was like turning into like dust, and I was losing hair, and I couldn't, the doctors couldn't find out what was wrong with me. But when I was diagnosed with lupus, I finally realized, okay, wow, at least they've gotten a diagnosis for me.
Yeah.
And so now this is the beginning of my journey to actually understand this disease and to actually find to beat it.
Yeah. Sometimes people, when they don't understand something, there tend to be stigma around a certain thing. I remember with COVID-19, those that were diagnosed with COVID-19, a lot of people were shying away from them. Just talk me through your experience when it comes to stigma. Did you find yourself being discriminated against just because you had lupus?
To be honest, I thought I was actually fortunate because, hearing that it was an incurable disease, I was like, wow, God, how could God give me such a disease? Maybe he wants me to actually find something about it and maybe do something about it.
Yeah.
And that is really what I did. I tried to understand what lupus is. And in understanding it, just like if you understand any skill, you're able to master it.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I mastered it, and I'm now 3 years in remission.
Okay. Now, obviously, on your journey to master and try to understand the disease, of course, you did go through the internet and try to find out what it is, how it's going to change your life, how it's going to affect you. When you were doing your research, do you think that we have enough awareness? Are there enough educational programs out there to teach people about lupus? Because I do understand in South Africa, we run one of the most prominent HIV programs where everyone knows about HIV in South Africa. But when it comes to lupus, did you find it to be the same?
I did do some research, but, first of all, I started off with myself and asked myself, why would the immune system actually attack your cells?
Yeah.
Then you realize that maybe it's attacking your cells because it cannot differentiate which one is your body part or a virus or a bacteria. And then from then onwards, I realized, no, man, for the fact that it's lost its intelligence, it means that, basically people talk about stress. Stress is what makes flares in lupus.
Yeah.
So I began to try to understand how come these flares come about. Then I realized that, the immune system actually under stress tends to, because if you understand how the immune system works, when it's created in the thymus and the bone marrow, it goes under training to distinguish between the virus and bacteria and the body cells.
Yeah.
So now when you are under stress, it doesn't get time to actually go through that training. So it's pumped into your blood system. Yeah. And then once it's in your blood system, it cannot distinguish what cells are which and what is a bacteria and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that is what actually goes into your body and then starts eating at your kidneys, at your lungs, at your heart, and all that stuff. So basically what I understood is that in order for you to actually reverse this, that is why they give you prednisone and all that stuff, so that it kind of like reduces your immune system.
Yeah.
So in order for people to actually reverse this whole system, they need to actually stop stressing.
Yeah.
Stop stressing.
Yeah.
Then your body can now start reproducing normal cells that can now take over.
All right.
And the older ones will start off. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ken. Mbukeli loyo beku Ken ezama ukusichazisela ukuthi ingabe kusuke sekwenze njani uma amasosha omzimba attacker umnikazi womzimba. Okwamanje mbukeli ake sibukele lo mbiko wentombazane ephila nesifo ilupus. Sister Makatsong bingelele ngwamkele expressions. Unahana hore government ya rona e bereka thata na to teach people ka malwetse a tshwana le bo lupus.
Government is really failing us because even if the nurses in hospital, public hospitals, they don't know anything about it. It's difficult for them to understand what is lupus. You have to start by explaining before they help you. So but when it comes to the medication, sometimes like for the people who have medical aids, maybe they're fine. But us, we can stay maybe more than 6 months without the chloroquine, which is the pill that we need to use it in anti-malaria. So I can stay with 6 months without having it. And then I have to make sure I'm buying it, which is it's expensive.
Just advise someone that has found out which they have lupus right now. What's the way forward?
I'll say when you're sick, you have lupus, and then maybe you're still going to school. You have to tell yourself, I'm gonna fight. Not I have lupus, yes, but now I get lupus.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm gonna fight with this lupus, and then I'm gonna focus on everything. So focus is the key, which is we have to say, I'm gonna focus on my sickness, also on my books, and then you don't have to take the sickness be in front before your life.
Yes.
Just take a sickness. Today I have a flu, and then in the morning I'll have the difficulties, but after I'm out, I'm gonna fight with this.
Yeah. Khamashashane ezonke izizwe emagagula ekatlehong noma ngabe kuphi la usibukele khona mbukeli njengamanje ehlala phansi nethezeka sisazama ukucobelelana ngolwazi ngesifo esibizwa ilupus nokuyindida mbukeli lapho isifo si-attacker umnini womzimba. And still with me in this discussion I'm joined by Dr. Kavita Makan and Sibongile Komati. Sibongile, I want you to tell me a bit about the initiatives that you run emphakathini in order ukufundisa abantu besimame ngale sifo, because we did speak about the fact that i-TB kuyaziwa ngayo, i-HIV kuyaziwa ngayo, but i-lupus, it seems like there's lack of information that's being sent out to the people.
Okay. After I was diagnosed with lupus, I realized that because I didn't know anything. I actually even thought it was leprosy because it's a word that I had never heard being spoken about. So I went onto the internet, I Googled anything in South Africa. There was nothing at that time.
Yeah.
And then I met a young girl who was diagnosed at the age of 10, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 23. Her name was SK Mahachane. Me and her started the Lupus Foundation of South Africa around 2010, 2011 to create awareness amongst lupus. So we do walks, we've done picnics, we do, I go to hospitals to train. That's how I met Dr. Kavita.
So you guys share ulwazi amongst yourselves.
Yes, I go to hospitals, I do radio shows that I'm invited in, but we still don't have enough information out there. And I hope the government can help us in doing that, making sure that even nurses are trained.
Doctor, closing remarks. I want to know, is there access to medication out there? Because I do understand that lupus comes in flares, right? There's a time where sometimes it's worse. It's like a roller coaster ride. Someone can be on a remission for 2 years or a year or 6 months. How accessible is the medication?
Look, I work at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. It's the biggest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere. You know, it's probably the largest lupus clinic in the country. We have access to the standard medication. So things like chloroquine, which is probably the cornerstone of treatment for lupus, is accessible, is available. And I'll come back to that because the special drug, hydroxychloroquine, is not available in South Africa. It's available in probably 95% of the world, but not in South Africa. And that was an access issue because people didn't understand the importance of lupus. But steroids are another important treatment. Access